How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to Chaos Head. So, things are getting weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. It feels like it can't get any weirder, and then it does. So, Rimi is like real. She seems to be our friend, despite how weird we are toward her. It turns out she like sits right behind us in class and probably has been there for like ages. We met the new girl who transferred in. He remarked on how she reminded him of his sister, which is already kind of weird enough. But we also had a strange encounter where he kind of went wandering around, ended up in Shibuya in a version of Shibuya that seemed to be empty, except for a person in a wheelchair. And that person called themselves Shogun and kind of confronted us and then left. And then we suddenly were kneeling in the middle of actual Shibuya, and Rimi picked us up and moved us off the middle of the street and kind of got us to safety, giving us a hug in the process, slapping us too. And then we were still scared of her, but we said thank you. And now we're here doing who knows what. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, we also got that weird phone call that was like the Crossing Walk song and then ended in a siren. And I was thinking it was either a prediction or a warning or maybe a ghost of something that should have happened when we saved our sister from wandering into the street. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Someone said in last week's comments, like, hey, don't worry, you'll get some answers eventually. Like, it's going to start giving you answers, and that's kind of a relief at this point because it's hard for you to be even, like, theoretical because it's just so much going on, and I don't have any, like, footing or, like, a lot of times when there's magic and mystery, there's kind of rules that are established. They don't have to be hardcore rules per se, but like usually there's like a logic and a pattern and expectation that can be delivered on. And I have yet to see a whole lot of that, so we're going to hopefully get something soon. But yeah, we'll see what happens now. So let's just jump right into it. Science City was a pair of buildings located just south of Shibuya Scramble Crossing. A small plaza rested in front of the entrance to the east building. While it was not nearly as big as the ones in front of Hichiko or Moyai statue or other popular destinations, it still found itself used quite often as a meeting place. Even now, around a dozen people were staring at their cell phones, waiting for their engagements to begin. Ah, it's you! I'm guessing this is one of those things, like it's not involving our main character. It's a side story, kind of giving us a glimpse at them, and like, look at her. Dang. Hello, Sena. Among these few, only one girl stood with an oddly stern expression on her face as she idled, a high school student known as Aoi Sena. She was standing next to the escalator leading down from the Inokashira line station. She leaned her back against a nearby white pillar. She thoughtfully scanned the environment with her gaze. In contrast to both the sharpness of her gaze and the season, she was nibbling on a popsicle, which in turn made her appear incredibly charming to the casual observer. I would agree. In truth, the girl was not waiting for anyone, but was instead quietly observing the passerby. From where she was standing, she could see all the way to the Jumbotron located at Scramble Crossing. A musical video from a famous singer was being displayed on it. In the lower portion of the screen, a news ticker was reporting the latest information on the recent string of incidents, colloquially referred to as NewGen. Colloquially. I know I've said that word properly before. Not a day went by without NewGen-related news. It was everywhere. TV, newspapers, the internet, weekly magazines, jumbotrons, electric billboards, everywhere. So for some reason, it looks like she, like, stakes out and like is seemingly a guardian of Shibuya, the crossing, because like we've seen her here before. It's where we've encountered her pretty much any time it wasn't school. Although Sena had absolutely no interest in the phenomena, she would often overhear people speaking about it as she passed them by on the streets of Shibuya. Whose eyes are those eyes? Over the past few days, she'd begun to see several people wearing t-shirts with those words emblazoned on them. Oh, that's disturbing. In Shibuya, the phrase had become popular as an obscure meme. It was now starting to really take off. Despite the brutal scene that the words originate from, people happily walked on down the streets, raving about how well the shirts were selling at souvenir shops in Harajuku. The clear indication of how disinterested people were in anything other than themselves. Sena snorted quietly in a contemptuous display, finishing the last bite of her popsicle and closing her eyes softly without losing her stern expression. Alright, what's that say? Yeah, it's funny because like this popsicle stick, I saw letters on it. I looked at it. It says "You lose." Thanks, game. Oh, but that makes sense actually. It's like one of those things where like sometimes the sticks will have a prize on it, but sometimes if it didn't, most of them would have the words like "you lose," or I think for when I was growing up, they usually said like "maybe next time." She listened carefully to the noise of the city. An abundance of different sounds billowed in front of the station on a Sunday afternoon. The roar of the trains arriving at the platform, the blaring horns of the taxis, people walking and talking, the background music coming from the jumbotrons and from inside the Science City stores, the announcements telling people how to safely ride the escalators. The sounds were never allowed to end. Before one sound finished, another one would appear, creating a multi-layered discord that rang throughout the station. In the midst of all the discordant noise, Sena focused her attention only on the people's voices. Her mind blocked out all the other sound, and their words soon became clear.
So
much going on.
でもあれじゃねNewGen の犯人に俺の顔が殺してくださいってアピールしてるようなもんじゃん俺もいよいよ全国デビューか
最近渋谷超怖いマジ嘘で歩けねえもんそういう
I'm trying to read it all, it's so hard.
キモい男とかだけ殺してほしいよねマジ応援する
A short click of the tongue escaped from Sena's mouth, and she stopped listening as soon after. There was nothing of value to be found in any of the noise. After all, noise was simply that, noise.
この視線の感覚、気のせいか?
Once more, Sena examined her surroundings. For a while now, she'd been feeling a repulsive sensation like cold fingers caressing her spine. A gaze being cast upon her by an unknown entity. One with which she was unable to pinpoint exactly what the source was. Sena pushed herself off the pillar she was leaning against. Then, as if she'd just remembered something, she stared down at the popsicle stick in her hand.
外れか.
Gradually growing more and more discontent, she wrinkled her brow and began to walk quietly toward the station. Interesting. So many, just little glimpses at potential answers. And what is the gaze? Because now we've seen all the main characters are feeling this gaze that our main characters had for a long time, and even the inspector Ban, he also gets that feeling.
どうしてあんなに泣きたくなるくらい青いのかな?
Because someone wished for it to be.
私は望んでない.
No, but I did. What? Because this place is your imaginary world, but at the same time, it's mine as well.
ねえ、あの空はどこにあるの?
So this Rimi? She looks pretty, but why is she floating in a blue sky and an ocean of endless flat water? Wherever you wish for it to be.
望んでいいの?
What is happening? Eggs and bakey? Sayartan was calling to me. Last night's episode of Blood Tomb was awesome. Sayartan played a huge part in it, and there was a super hot kiss scene. The animation quality was practically movie tier too. Uh-huh. Sayartan was calling me. Plus, she was saying such moe things I couldn't not wake up. I tore the blanket off my body and got up from the sofa with a groan. Uh-huh. The moment I turned off my alarm clock, the voice of Sayartan that had been echoing throughout the room disappeared.
おはよう、
Sena alarm clock had been very useful. If it didn't turn it off, the volume would slowly get louder and louder, and if I still didn't get up, the obnoxious buzzer sound would ring out. I wanted it to be Sarah-tan who woke me up in the morning, so I made it a point to wake up and turn it off before the buzzer. I imagine it's one of those buzzers like I grew up with, because like we just got the cheapest alarm clocks. Just had the like the one made you like jump out of your skin when it woke you up. I'd only failed to do so once or twice so far. After all, being woken up by Sarah-tan was a great way to start the day. Waking up was the absolute worst. I played video until dawn, and the couch had been extremely uncomfortable once I actually had gone to sleep, but having her wake me up helped alleviate some of that pain. You also could just, I don't know, clean your bed. I don't understand how people could live like this. I really just don't get it. Today was a school day. I skipped a day last week, so minimum attendance chart was really starting to fall apart. With the chart, I was only slated to go twice this week, but because of that deviation, I was stuck with having to go 3 times instead. I didn't want to go, but it'd be much worse if I didn't. If I missed any more days, I wouldn't be able to graduate. Then again, whether or not I graduated made no difference to me, but to be honest. Just a moment ago, I'd been having a dream with Rimi in it. It was a strange dream. One that felt terribly wistful, one that felt terribly lonesome, and one that felt terribly sad. And one that felt terribly distant. Would Rimi come to school today? I'd been thinking about that day before yesterday constantly. I'd been thinking about it so often I'd even forgot to play ESO yesterday. That's an achievement. There had been the appearance of Shogun and the delusion where every person in Shibuya disappeared, but I was barely given either of those things any thought. It had just been a delusion of mine. There was no way Shogun could be such an old man. The idea of people just disappearing from Shibuya or whatever was completely ridiculous. There was no point worrying about it. It'd been a horribly realistic delusion, sure, but the fact that I'd allowed myself to fall for something so unrealistic so easily and get all freaked out about it was just embarrassing. But regardless, above all else, I was thinking about Rimi, the girl I'd been calling the demon girl until only a couple days ago. Most of what I'd felt back then was shaky and surreal, as if there was some sort of dream, but I could still vividly remember the sensation of Rimi's body embracing my own. If she hadn't done that, I could have gone insane and lost myself completely. Why had Rimi saved me? Maybe because we really were friends. I didn't have any memories of us being classmates now, let alone since the first year, nor do I remember going to the movies with her along with Misumi-kun. But the way she treated me was definitely how you treat a real close friend. She'd even seemed like she'd been close to crying when she held me. That, at the very least, I didn't think was an act. That was the first time I'd ever seen a girl care about, let alone cry over an otaku freak like me. When she treated me like that, all my fears and suspicions were blown away in an instant. It's interesting, too, because, like, he's right, and yet that's so disturbing. Like, the fact that he's right, and that the evidence is starting to build up more and more that maybe she wasn't involved in the murder, and again, that she is somehow, like, a trusted friend of ours, that she's known us for most of our lives, and the fact that we just don't have any memory of her is so disturbing. It would be so unsettling to me. It would almost be worse than her being this, like, master deceiver. In fact, it made me feel like I might fall in love with her. No, I obviously couldn't let myself do that. Confusion invaded every corner of my mind. How was I supposed to act around Rimi from now on? Was Rimi my ally or my enemy? Was Rimi the NewGen culprit? She'd saved me. That was an undeniable fact. But it was just as much of a fact that I'd seen her standing still as could be at the scene of the crucifixion covered in blood. Yeah, that's a tough one. On my way to school, I stopped by the Shoto Park. After what had happened with Yuya, I put a stop to that habit of eating breakfast there before going to school. There was no way I could feel even remotely relaxed when I thought Yuya could be watching me from anywhere. And even if I ignored that, she came up to talk to me. She would start going off about her irritating and delusional schizo bullcrap all over again. I didn't want anything to do with a girl like her. Yuya was Rimi's underling. Sure, my original guess may have been incorrect, but that didn't mean that Yuya wasn't my enemy. It was still possible that Shogun was the boss of the whole thing and that Yuya was one of his underlings. Either way, I knew I'd be better off staying as far away from her as I could. And yet, I found myself coming here today for some reason. I examined my surroundings carefully to make sure I couldn't see you anywhere, and once I knew the coast was clear, I slowly sat down on my usual bench. I took a bite of the chocolate bread I had bought at the convenience store, then looked at the pond. There was next to no wind, and the surface of the water was calm and serene. I could see the occasional shadows of carp-esque fish gliding through the murky water. The park was unusually empty today. It was a very quiet spot. As my gaze wandered across the park, I couldn't help but think about Rimi. To be honest, I'd been dreading going to school today. I knew I'd have to face her if I did. That was the real reason why I was stalling at the park. I felt like I'd said a lot of awful things to her. And yet, the smile on her face never faltered. She always treated me like I was a close friend. And I was sure that when I went to school today, she would keep doing that as if nothing had ever happened. She'd smile and talk to me like we were friends, pretending that she didn't even care about all that had happened in front of the 107. It was hard to put into words, but I felt a little bit annoyed by her constant cheerfulness. Yet at the same time, I also ended up feeling more cheerful myself when I was with her. Wasn't sure how to act once I did run into her. It was true that I didn't think she was a demon anymore. But honestly, I don't think of her as a friend either. Misumi-kun had said that she and I had been really close classmates for the past year and a half, but I don't remember anything like that at all. Maybe it really was because of the person controlling me. But making my memories of Rimi and only Rimi disappear with pinpoint accuracy like that, there was no way that was possible. The thing is, the reason why, we can't trust that is that there's rules at hand we don't understand. So anything technically is possible because we don't know what the limits are. Upon entering the school building, I lowered my head even further toward the ground. As I was my usual MO, I kept close to the wall, walked slowly toward the staircase. My class was on the 3rd floor. Getting up there was a pretty big hassle. They could really use an escalator or something. Dang. 3 flights of stairs is too much. Oh, that's not a great place to be, buddy. Oh, it's her. When I reached the foot of the staircase, I spotted a girl climbing unsteadily up the stairs. She was dragging her right leg a little as she walked. Maybe she twisted it? Her petite body swayed from side to side. She looked extremely unstable. As the other students passed by her one after the other, the girl slowly continued to climb exactly 1 step at a time. Now that sucks too, because I've had a leg injury before where I needed crutches or near crutches. I've had more leg injuries than I'd like to admit. And yeah, it sucks. You don't really think about just how nice it is to be genuinely mobile, like a regularly mobile person, until you have it when you are less mobile, even a little bit. And then you're like, oh my gosh, life is so much different now. Watching her from below, I would be able to see her panties any second now. You know, dude, you really don't want me to like you. Shh, if I keep this up, I'd be labeled a total pervert. Last thing I needed was to go in front of a mirror and see myself as Bill Clinton or some crap. What a reference that is. With that thought in mind, I stepped onto the stairs in order to pass the girl, but right when I did... Oh. Uh-oh. The girl caught the tip of her shoe on one of the steps and she immediately staggered. Ooh. She then fell down so hard, you could almost feel the crash sound effect. Fortunately, she'd ended up falling on the landing, so she hadn't fallen down the entire staircase. She was still on her knees from the pain, though, and it was staying pretty still. Could this be a flag? Yeah, no way. Even if it was, calling out to her or anything remotely similar would be impossible for me. Help her, dude! So I hurriedly slipped past her. Sorry, but you should get some womanizer who actually into 3D to help you. Someone like Misumi-kun. You really shouldn't rely on me. But the girl was staying curled up on the ground so motionlessly, I started to get a little worried. I was halfway up the stairs when I slowly turned back around to check on her. Yes! Oh, he's growing! The girl was gripping onto the railing, trying the absolute hardest to stand back up. Her knees were trembling. She looked like a newborn fawn or something. Her knee was oozing blood. Maybe she'd scraped it. Aww.
Huh.
Her face. I'd seen it before. Wasn't she the girl who transferred into my class last week? What was her name again? I couldn't remember. Oh wow, she was crying. Did it hurt that badly? The fall had definitely been pretty bad, but not bad enough that she'd cry from it. There was nobody else willing to lend her a hand. After just barely managing to stand up, she bent forward and peered down at her knee. She must have been checking to see if she'd heard it. The transfer student wiped away her tears, sat down her bag on the spot, and started rummaging around inside it. What's she looking for, I wondered. Suddenly she raised her hand above her head in triumphant manner. Clasped in her hand was a band-aid. Our eyes met. The transfer student went red in surprise soon after, then hung her head. Regardless, she looked like she was okay. I was sure she'd be fine without me. Thinking that, I hurriedly made my way to class. Nah. As per usual, I kept my head down and gaze fixed on my toes. And while still remaining silent, I took my seat. When I sat down, I remembered that the transfer student had said something to me on the day she transferred. I'm so happy we're in the same class or something. I'd forgotten all about it after everything with Rimi, but I wondered what she meant by that. Wait, did she actually say that? Again, I did a delusion there. I'm so happy we're in the same class. Why? How what? How would she know who we are?
Yo, Taku.
Still according to routine, Misumi called out to me. Maybe he didn't have any other friends beside me. He'd always talk to me and no one else, so I was starting to genuinely suspect that.
聞いてくれよ。昨日さ、怪しいおっさん2人が校長室に入ってくのを見たんだ。
Whoa.
で、俺とリミトでこっそり盗み聞きしてみたらびっくりしたぜ。
It was the inspector.
その2人、刑事だったんだぜ。
Detectives, yeah.
え？
Detectives?
なんか深刻そうに全校生徒の名簿とか見ててよ。
Oh boy.
もしかしてニュージェネと関係あんのかな？
Maybe the true NewGen culprit was someone at this very school. I couldn't help it, but a face popped into my mind, Rimi's.
なあ、盗み聞きしてたら見事にバレちゃったんだけどね。
Oh no. That's a bad sign. I jumped. Speaking of the devil, jeez. Just felt my heart rate leap when I heard Rimi's voice invade the conversation. I couldn't look up. I was too nervous, but this was a completely different kind of nervousness than last week's.
あれはお前がドア勝手に開けたせいだぞ。分かってんのか？
What the heck, Rimi?
しょうがないでしょ。本物の刑事さんって見るの初めてだったからちょっと興奮しちゃってつい。
何をどうやったらついドアを開けるんだよ。おかげで俺らまで刑事から話を聞かれる羽目になったんだからな。
大臣ってば刑事さんに聞かれちゃまずいことでもあったの？
そういうお前はどうなんだ？
さあね。
Misumi-kun and Rimi were having a conversation with my desk sandwiched between them. They were completely ignoring my existence. But to be honest, I was grateful for that. Even if Rimi did talk to me, I didn't have any faith I'd be able to say anything back. I was hoping that the bell would ring before they got a chance to say anything to me, but when I glanced at the clock, I saw there were still about 5 minutes until class started.
そういやタク、ここに来る途中で梢ちゃん見なかったか？
Is that the new girl? Kozue-chan. Who?
ああ、そっか。どうせお前のことだから覚えてねえとは思ったけど、マジでそうだったんだな。先週転校してきた子のことだよ。折原梢ちゃん。
Right. Oh, so that was her name. Orihara Kozue.
階段で
階段？
見た。
お、そっか。じゃあもうすぐ来るな。
Misumi-kun's voice gave off an aura of intense enthusiasm. I hadn't seen him this energetic since a few days ago when he'd find out that Fez was from the next class over. In other words, I'd never seen him give his all for anything except girls. Which reminded me that just last week, Misumi-kun had already gone to hit on the transfer student the moment she'd arrived. You really are incorrigible. You've got a girlfriend and everything. Hope you're real proud.
なあ、梢ちゃんってマジ可愛いと思わねえ？
He asked me something I had trouble answering. I moved my head down ambiguously, which he apparently took as a yes.
太郎！俺一目で気に入っちまったよ。
はい
なんか守ってやりたくなるんだよな。
Uh-huh.
男子みんなも同じ意見だよ。どいつも可愛いって言ってんだ。けどよ、女子の間じゃあんま評判良くねえんだよな。
Oh, I wonder if she's experiencing bullying.
まだ転校してきたばっかだぜ。それなのに早くもうざいみてえな意見まで出てきてんだよ。
Why?
このクラスの女子って性格悪いやつ多すぎだ。
Maybe. That's a broad
そ
assumption,
れっ
but
て大臣のせいじゃないの？ だいたいそのうざいって言ったの、どうせ第一の彼女でしょ？
Oh. Who is his girlfriend?
ああ、そうだけど。
そりゃあ彼女にしてみればうざいに決まってるよ。自分の彼氏が目の前で折原さんを口説きに行っちゃってたらさ。
Yeah.
私でさえよく喧嘩売られるんだから。大輔くんに近寄らないでって。しかも一人じゃなくて何人かから言われた。
Who is she? I need to know who this girl is.
マジ？
You
自覚
idiot.
なしか。少しは反省したら？
いやー、モテる男は辛いぜ。
Oh, sure, sure.
これだよ。さすが女の敵。もう私フォローしてあげないからね。あ、折原さん来た。
なんか、怪我してるみたいじゃね？
ほんとだ。どうしたんだろう。
She'd gotten hurt back when I saw her on the stairs. No, she was hurt before that. I obviously wasn't going to tell them that, though. I was trying to avoid talking to Rimi in any way possible.
俺、ちょっと行ってくれ。
Mitsumi-kun ran up to where the transfer student was. Thanks to that, Rimi was the only one left standing close to my desk. Ah, Mitsumi-kun, please don't go. I don't know if I want to delude right now. Rimi didn't say anything, but she didn't move away from my seat either. Considering the fact that I was hunched over so far on my desk that I couldn't even sink my teeth into it, I couldn't see her expression. All I could see was her waist, but if that were true, then that would mean she had to be facing me. In other words, she was looking at me. I should probably say something. Maybe a greeting of some sort? But it wasn't like I ever greeted people normally. It would be even more unnatural for me to suddenly start doing it out of the blue like that. Maybe I should bring up the transfer student? But it wasn't like I even chatted with Rimi normally. It would be even more unnatural for me to suddenly start chatting with her out of the blue like that. I could thank her for the day before yesterday? No, before I did that, maybe I should apologize for being so rude to her after she'd done so much to help me? I could also ask her about why she'd been there back then. I could ask her if maybe she'd hugged me because she liked me. Or I could ask her about why she was at the side of the crucifixion. No. None of those topics are conversation starters at all. What was I supposed to do? The silence put more and more pressure on me. I knew I ought to say something, and I knew it would be awkward to stay silent, but I still couldn't force out any words. I hate the 3D world so much. I was so tired of always choking over everyone trying to talk. I just wanted to hurry up and go home and get my comfort serotonin.
ねえ、タク。
Rimi's voice suddenly broke the silence. I jumped in surprise and shudder ran through me. I still couldn't look up.
その、一昨日はあの後大丈夫だった？
Rimi's voice was quiet. I felt her breath faintly on my ear. When I looked up in surprise, I realized she'd moved her face really close to mine. She was now whispering in my ear. Rimi's body was right next to mine. The soft, warm body that hugged me in the middle of the road. My mind was going completely blank, and the only thing I could think of was the sensation of Rimi's body against mine. This dude needs a cold shower.
無事に帰れたかなって。結構心配した。
I nodded frantically several times.
そっか。よかった。もう、あんな危ないことしちゃダメだぞ。
Upon telling me that, Rimi made to leave the classroom. I felt the sudden urge to ask her something, so she just said something dangerous like that. I wanted to ask her. Back then, what did it all look like to you? Considering the fact that she hadn't mentioned anything in particular, it seemed like she didn't know anything about the people temporarily disappearing from the streets of Shibuya, nor anything about the wheelchair-bound Shogun. Which would probably mean I'd just been one of my delusions after all. That was why I wanted to ask her. But I didn't think I'd be able to look up and do so after all the time. Either way, I could barely do it today. Couldn't even prepare myself to ask her. So next time then, I'd ask her the very next time I came to school. Yeah, that should probably organize my questions I wanted to ask her before then.
あれ？ねえ、タク、折原さんがこっち来たよ。
Wait, what? Why? The transfer student? Why was she coming over here? Was she going to come down on me for not helping her on the stairs earlier? But she didn't seem like the type of person to do that. Or maybe she wasn't coming up to me, but she actually wanted Rimi for something? I really like she and I have a lot in common. Like, she and Taku are very similar, where she seems to struggle socially. The transfer student came up to Rimi, then stopped. She didn't say anything. What the heck? As long as Rimi was here, I couldn't raise my head. The transfer student's toes were fidgeting, but she didn't try to say anything.
折原さん、どうしたの？
For some reason, the new student timidly then placed a single bandage on the edge of my desk. It was a fancy one with a picture of a weird character, Garo Froggy, emblazoned on it.
Huh?
Was she giving it to me? How do I react? This is Onohara Kozu's girl was kind of weird. Oh, fetch me! Oh, fine! I'll take it!
折原さん、泣かないで。
Why is she crying? Why was she crying? Was it because I didn't say anything? But the transfer student hadn't said anything to me either.
タクは怒ってるわけじゃないと思うよ。
Rimi swooped in to cover for me. Come to think of it, that was a little bit odd. I didn't know next to anything about Rimi, and yet she knew a lot about me.
彼ってあんまり人と目を合わせようとしないの。引っ込み思案ってやつ。だからそんなにガチガチに緊張しなくてもね。私にも絆創膏くれるの？ありがとう。
She's just handing him out. With that, the transfer student bowed her head deeply to Rimi, then she sped her way back to her seat. It was almost like she was running away or something. Dude, she's like you, dude. She's just like you.
なんだかよくわかんないんだけど、タク、その絆創膏をもらってあげるべきだと思う。
Why had she given it to me?
梢ちゃん、無口だよな。
I got the feeling Missy McCoon had come back.
転校初日に俺が校内を案内したんだけどよ。
うわぁ、早くも手出したんだ。
Yeah.
まだ出してねえっつうの。
Yet.
で、まあ1時間ぐらいかけてあちこち回ったんだけど、もう俺一人で延々と喋り続けたよ。あん時はさすがにちーっと疲れたぜ。
I'm sure you did.
しかもすぐ泣きべそかく。
そうそう。今も急に泣き出したから何が起きたかと思ってあたふたしちゃった。
そんだけピュアなんだよ。なあタク、お前ならわかるだろ。梢ちゃんの仕草一つ一つの可愛さってのがよ。お前流に言うなら萌えってやつだ。
Be fair? Again, how do you know?
なんだ、クソでも我慢してんのか？
You suck. I shook my head from side to side as hard as I could.
タク、さっきからちっとも喋ってくれないんだ。
Yeah, that's because you're here. I wasn't ready for that. I had never talked to a friend who was also a girl, all friendly before. Then again, I'd never had a single female friend before, not throughout my entire life.
でもさ、今、折原さんと話してみて、なんとなく思ったんだけど、彼女と話してると、なんだか疲れちゃいそうかも、なんて。
Okay. So, you're also talking bad about her now.
女子ってのはマジで同性に対して容赦ねえな。ま、梢ちゃんは俺が守るからいいけどな。
Uh-huh.
ほんの数十秒前に大地も相手するの疲れたって言ってなかった？
うっせ。梢ちゃんはタクと同じ匂いがするぜ。ほっとけねえって感じ？
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
それはわかるかも。
Right. Well, that was interesting. Very, very interesting. Sound of the bell told me that all classes were done for the day. The second it went off, I packed up my things and got up from my desk and left the classroom. I couldn't stand the subtle distance I felt between me and Rimi for a second longer, so I wanted to get out of the classroom ASAP. Besides, I always had to stop by Mandadarake today. Mangadarake. That's right. In the end, I hadn't been able to say a single word to Rimi. I'd had several chances to talk to her, but just like this morning, I'd kept my mouth locked shut the entire time. I might have screwed up by doing that. That would make me even more difficult to talk to her next time I saw her. I was sinking deeper and deeper into the thick swamp that was trying to figure out how the hell to act around Rimi.
Oni!
Hey, best sister! Just as I was about to leave the school building, I was hit with the voice of a certain irritating person. Nanami came running up to me holding a trash can in her hand. She must have been in the middle of taking it out. Unfortunately for me, the bead spotted me. Tried to ignore her speed my way out of there, but just like usual, Nanami refused to let that happen. The hem of my uniform was pulled tightly from behind.
妹見て逃げるなって何度言えばわかるの？
I know, right?
なんだよ。
なんだよじゃないよ。お兄が逃げるからナナもつい追いかけちゃうんじゃん。
Okay, then don't chase after me if you don't need something.
相変わらず家に電話かけてこないし。まあ、ナナはもう諦めたけど、どうせお兄が真面目に連絡入れてくるとは思えないもんね。
Aww. Wow, she actually understood me for once then. Again, I didn't know how she wouldn't, being my sister and all, even though I had no need in the slightest for a 3v1.
というわけで、これからも定期的にナナがお兄の部屋に様子見に行くから、感謝してよね。
Dang it. Well, of course she'd come to this. If only I could somehow be freed from the curse of my obnoxious little sister. Call her! If you called her, she wouldn't stop by. Heck, even though I'd never happen, I at least deserve some form of compensation for putting up with her. I thought about that kind of thing daily. Oh, that was it. This is my chance to put my plan from earlier into action. If I was lucky, it might even be able to make it work as a modest form of revenge. I checked my surroundings, then I started walking toward the courtyard, signaling for Nanami to follow me.
何？
ちょっと来てくれ。
なんで？なんかあるの？
She was so unbelievably annoying. Was she incapable of following me or something? What a fetching idiot.
ナナミに大事な頼みがある。
え？頼み？お兄が？
Yeah.
なのに？
Nanami's eyes went wide.
珍しいじゃん。お兄が頼み事なんて。
とにかく黙ってついてこいって。
あ、ちょっと待ってよ。
There weren't many people in the courtyard. During lunchtime, the place was always crowded with students eating lunch, but the only people who'd bother coming out here after school were from the gardening club or whatever.
で、頼みって？
She's so happy. Nanami lowered the trash can she was carrying to the ground and gave me a big grin as she puffed out her chest.
あ、条件はマクで汚りね。その条件飲んでくれるんなら、本当は嫌だけど、お兄の頼み聞いてあげる。
Every little gosh darn thing she did pissed me off. I couldn't believe she actually wanted me to pay her for that back for this. Didn't help that I'd already treated her to Mickey D's before, too. Forget it.
わかった。おごる。
え、本当？今日のお兄、いつもと違うね。
Well, yeah, because I was lying. Fuhihi. Saws for being a liar. Saws, I don't remember that one. Net slang short for sorry. Often used in conjunction with lol and other common net slang. Fuhihi, saws, and lol. Although, as indeed apology is often used in order to tease or provoke the other party instead. Okay, gotcha. I never used that one. And with that, I handed Nanami my cell phone. I then asked her to call a prank caller whose number was stored in my call history. 03 blah 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 blah.
着歴の番号にかける？相手は誰？
ネットの知り合い。
Nanami was tilting her head with a suspicious expression on her face, so I quickly told the lie that would seem possible to her.
どうしてナナがかけるの？
かければわかる。
なんか企んでない？
Oh my gosh, shut up! All you have to do is shut up and do what I say. You could do it! If you can't even do that, then just go home. I have no use for you.
じゃあもうお前には頼まない。
I went to snatch back the cell phone, but Nanami pulled her hand back, evading me.
あ、わかったって、かけるよ。かければいいんでしょ？ほんと、わがままなお兄だな。
Yeah, you should talk. Choking back my anger and watched with bated breath as Nanami dialed the number in question. Nanami, blissfully unaware, put the cell phone to her ear and waited for them to answer. I noticed that in the other hand she was holding a cell phone with, she was wearing a yellow bangle. That was the one I'd given her, wasn't it? Then again, it was more something she just decided to appropriate rather than to actually give it to her. She even wore it when she went to school? Did she really like it that much? Even though it was just some cheap bangle I'd gotten for free. Nanami really did have no taste at all. Not that I could really speak for anyone else, though. This didn't matter at all right now. Anyway, who was gonna answer the phone? Who would it be? Some scary DQN piece of garbage? Best case scenario would just be a prank and had nothing to do with Shogun or Yua.
あ、もしもし
Someone must have picked up, so Nanami called out as she covered the receiver with her hand. Only to raise her eyebrows soon after, then she thrust the phone back in my direction.
おに
なんだ
なんだじゃないよ。現在使われてませんって言ってるよ。
Oh, that's weird.
え
Then how did it call us? I snatched the phone from Nanami and put it in my ear. What I heard was,
おかけになった電話番号は現在使われておりません。番号をご確認の上、もう一度おかけ直しください。
that's weird. She was right. I guess that meant it really had been a prank, huh? It was a prank where you called a bunch of random numbers simultaneously over a couple days, and when the prank was over, both the number and phone were destroyed, or something like that. Either way, it was a pretty large-scale prank. But meh, didn't really matter to me either way. I knew now the mysterious caller had been nothing more than a prank, and nothing else mattered anymore.
ねえ、一体何なの？
もうお前用なし
Leaving Nanami standing there, I started to walk off, but it didn't take long for her to chase after me.
どういうことか説明してよ。
Just shut up already.
お
No.
前掃除中だろゴミ箱置きっぱなしだぞ
でも説明聞いてないもん。
僕は帰る
Without dealing with Nanami, I walked quickly to the school gate with her right on my tail.
おに、じゃあマクディおごる約束だからね。ちゃんと覚えといてよ。
知るか
ちょっと、嘘ついたの？
No, please say no.
まあな
Oh.
うふ
Nanami stopped dead in her tracks, looking pretty upset. But I kept right on moving.
おにのバカ！
She yelled out in a voice loud enough to echo throughout the entire area. Fed up with her, I went to turn around and saw her glaring at me with her hands on her hips.
おになんて、携帯の電磁波の影響で脳みそスカスカにされて死んじゃえ！
Stop! No! Thanks to Nanami screeching, more eyes were looking our way, even though I made it a point to stand out as little as possible at school. My sister was the most obnoxious crapper of all time. Not giving a darn about what Nanami had said, I ran off toward the school gate. It was best to retreat at times like this.
バカ！
You caused this! Nanami's voice could still be heard even after I passed through the school gate, making me feel completely and utterly drained. You are the one at fault here. Gosh darn it. What did you expect? Higashi Matsushima was one of my favorite artists. They were ultra famous, and their fans were always form long lines at every one of their events. I'd heard the news the Bloody Tune Dojinshi that come out this summer had sold out in no time flat. I'd wanted to go too, but for all the events were being sold at had been way too crowded to the point where it would have been too much for me. Because of that, I found myself tearfully giving up. It had been naive of me to think that manga draka would be safe just because they'd consignment sales. There had indeed been some consignment sales, but they'd been annihilated in practically an instant. On various online auctions, the premium price is set at tens of thousands of yen. All scalpers should die in a fire. I mean, I can't agree with that. Derogatory term for those referred to people who acquire difficult-to-find products only to sell them at higher prices at online auctions. Yes, I agree. Regardless, all that in mind, I thought that it was probably impossible to get my hands on it. However, just yesterday, while I've been surfing at channel, I just happened to see that a new issue had been recently restocked at Manga Drakas, Daraks, which is why I had headed there for immediately.
神様奇跡を起こしたまえ
I prayed to the heavens in front of the store, and then I stormed inside. I scanned the Daijoushi, it's Dojins, right? Dojinshi. The Dojinshi section with my eyes as wide as dinner plates. I went back and forth down the aisle, searching over and over again to make sure I didn't miss anything. But I couldn't find it. cry. No, was it already sold out? I casually observed the cashier. It was a girl. She wasn't very cute, but she did seem friendly. I'd never even used the hyper-advanced technique known as asking the clerk about whether or not they had a certain item in stock. The reason was, of course, I didn't have the courage to do so. And not only that, but the title of the Hagashi Matsushima's book was Sierra Town Cosplayer Gone Wild. So yeah, I'm asking about it was completely and utterly impossible. Excuse me, miss, but do you have a copy of Hagashi Matsushima's Sierra Town Cosplay Gone Wild? If I asked a female clerk something like that, I'd no doubt be labeled as a pervert, and I knew for that for a fact, thank you very much. Except when you go to a store like this anyway, that sells stuff like that, you could still ask. In the end, I simply gave up on asking the clerk anything and exited the store dejectedly. Yeah.
帰るか。
Or maybe I should go to that cafe? Flipping between the two as I walked, the sword I'd seen before flashed past the edge of my vision. It was a sword with a distinctive two-pronged blade, the one that girl B, the girl who'd called herself Sena, had been carrying around the city. In the crowded center of Gaia, the tip of the sword jutted above the heads of people walking down the street. As it got closer to me, I hurriedly took refuge in a nearby arcade. When it appeared out from the shadows, it didn't take long for Sena herself to appear, sword resting on her shoulder. There she is! Wearing an expression that was just as terrifying as ever, she walked quickly toward the station. She didn't seem to have noticed me. But even then, after having experienced the humiliation play that was lurking around a sword like hers, the bold way that Sena walked around without a care in the world impressed me. I had this thought. Oh, what's his name? Oh, what's our friend's name? Gosh darn it, he's always, he's rushing the wrong way and I can't remember his name. But I talked about how he has a girlfriend. If it's Sena, I'm gonna be pissed. Was she not embarrassed to hold a huge sword like that? I mean, she had to have been questioned by a police officer at least once. No way, no way she hadn't. As I pondered that, Sena's figure got farther and farther away. Where do they sell bad D swords like the one she has, I wondered. The one I'd gotten a hold of didn't glow, nor did it have any bad A shape. It wasn't exactly satisfied with it. In comparison to the sword Sena was carrying, mine was far less impressive in terms of design. The entire reason behind me getting a D sword was to use it as a protective charm. Back at the Scramble Crossing, I had been trembling in fear and wished for something I could rely on. After Rimi had shown up, I'd become slightly more stable, but the situation surrounding me was not getting any better. I still had a lot of enemies, such as Shogun, Yua, etc. That was the reason why I wanted to get my hands on a D sword that looked way stronger than the one I actually had. Of course, there was also the collector's spirit found in every Taku. As if drawn to Sena's sword, I'd been staggering over towards Scramble Crossing without realizing it. Oh god, I bit my lip. I didn't want to be out in front of the station. I would reluctantly go to Center Gaia or school or wherever because I had things I had to do there, but I couldn't help it. I preferred not going anywhere near them. Having a crowd of total strangers standing around me made me feel as if any escape route had been stolen away. Just the illusion of that made it hard to breathe. Unsurprisingly, the area in front of the station was infested with people. I was starting to feel more and more sick, so I opted to look down at the ground and try to hold back the nausea a bit. Because of that, the next time I looked up, I realized I'd lost sight of the conspicuous sword. It looked like she was been walking toward Hichiko statue, but... Right then, the light above Scramble Crossing turned green. A sea of people rushed into the intersection from various directions. It became pretty chaotic. I'm also noticing, like, in the design, they specifically designed some of the people in here to be wearing his school uniforms. Like, there's, like, 3 girls there wearing the uniform. Or more, actually. There's, like, 5 or 6. A whole host of people walking every which way, and they did it all without even so much as bumping into each other. When I saw something like that, I realized how unrealistic an empty Scramble Crossing I'd seen in my delusion the other day really was. There probably wasn't even a single second in the entire year where there wasn't people in this place. What was I even trying to accomplish by chasing after Sena in the first place? I hadn't even been able to ask a friend, manga draka employee whether they'd had something in stock, so how exactly was I supposed to talk to someone who looked unfriendly and scary looking like Sena? Besides, she might have been my enemy. I don't know what she'd do to me if I carelessly followed her around without any form of protection. What was wrong with me? I should just go home. I finally decided on that, but right when I was about to turn around... What the fetch? I noticed a white chain laying on the street. I couldn't see the end of it because it was concealed by the legs of various pedestrians, but it seemed to be stretching from where I was standing all the way to the other side of the scramble crossing. What the heck? It was a ridiculously long chain. Was it construction or something? But there was no evidence of construction going on anywhere. I couldn't believe they just let a chain lying around like this. Was this location they were shooting for some movie or TV show? No, they wouldn't be filming at a time. They wouldn't be filming at a time as crowded as this. Okay, then someone throw it away. The chain this long? I'd already been hard enough to just bring it as far out here. Regardless, it was definitely going to get in the way of people and cars. Tilting my head in confusion, I examined my surroundings to see how people around me were reacting to it. I thought it would be dangerous if somebody caught their leg on it, but not a single person was paying any attention to it. I rubbed my eyes and tried looking at it once more time, thinking that it might be an optical illusion or something, but the chain was still there. Although we're seeing the wibbly of the screen, it's implying it's not real. I didn't have the courage to touch it, though it creeped me out too much. It wasn't a cheap-looking plastic one. It was an extremely sturdy-looking iron chain. How long had this been left sitting here? What? If these were normal circumstances, I think it was some kind of trap. After which I would have run away in fear, suspecting something terrifying might be waiting for me. But now, for whatever reason, I couldn't help but wonder where the chain led. My mind was overtaken by a compulsive obsession that told me I had to follow this chain. I crossed Scramble Crossing before the light turned red, bumping into several pedestrians as I did. At the end of the continuous chain was an old dark green train car that was sitting next to Hichako's statue. The wheels had been removed, so it was closer to a monument or an exhibit rather than a functional train car. You're supposed to be able to enter it freely, too. It's funny, because, like, I recognize this train car from Persona. I'm pretty sure in Persona 5, the politician guy you work with is giving speeches by this thing. The white chain was extending from the open door to the inside of the train. There were tons of people parked in front of Hichako, but not one of them was paying attention to the chain. They didn't show any sign they were even aware of it. As well as that, there were no signs of any people on the train at all. With a gulp, I peered inside the train car. What the fetch? In that moment, I realized it was a trap. I couldn't believe myself, which was why I hadn't suspected it at all before. The car appeared to be empty, but there was a figure, a single person inside. There she is. Aoi Sena, who was sitting cross-legged on the burgundy train seat. Her sharp gaze was fixed firmly on me. For some reason, she was holding a light blue popsicle in her hand. This was a crunchy coon, right? Forget it, I couldn't care less about crunchy coons right now. More importantly, the gigantic D-sword she'd been carrying was mysteriously nowhere to be found. Wonder where she even managed to put the thing, with how huge it was and all. In place of the sword, there was a white chain curled around one of her legs. Which reminded me that back when I'd first met her in Centragaya, she'd said something about finding her in a train car in front of the station. This must have been what she'd meant. I'm not sure I want to, but let's see what a positive delusion will be. Was she the one who'd put the chain here? Could she really have been lugging around such a long chain? It looked like it weighed over 10 kilograms, and not that, it also had to be over 50 meters long. I had no idea what was up with this girl. She was entirely unknown to me. She wasn't normal. Could she be Shogun? Feeling scared now, I moved to run away without saying anything, only for a sharp voice to strike me right then.
Hide.
Alright, let's delusion it up. Automatically stopped dead in my tracks. Thoughts ran through my head frantically. If I ran away, what would she do? Would she swing her D-sword at me while she chased me? When I tried to envision it happening, it freaked me out way too much, so I hurriedly shook the delusion out of my head. Conversely, what if I were to just walk straight instead? She would get much better impression of me. Maybe then she wouldn't be so violent. Maybe she'd even be in a good enough mood that she'd be interested in selling her D-sword to me. I didn't think that she'd give it up that easily, but maybe I could at least get her to tell me where she'd bought it from. On top of that, she seemed to have been waiting for me. In other words, that meant she'd taken some form of interest in me. She looked scary, but that was often the case with tsundere types. She must have actually been pretty nice in reality. Whoa, she's making a lot of assumptions. That could just be wishful thinking, though. Then again, it wasn't like I was going to get culled just because I went inside. Surely that was true. We were right in the middle of Shibuya, after all, right in front of the Hichako statue. Hichiko, not Hichako, Hichiko. There were tons of people surrounding us. Killing me in public in front of them would be suicide. I took a single deep breath, gathered my resolve, and then I stepped onto the train. I suddenly realized the bundle of chains that had been at Sena's feet just a moment ago had disappeared without a trace. I thought that she'd moved it somewhere, but there had been no sound indicating that, and she was still sitting in the same seat she'd been sitting on the entire time. Even if she had moved it, where the heck had she moved it to? I didn't see it anywhere on the train. Sena, completely unconcerned with how lost I was, asked me something unintelligible yet again. As I shook my head left and right in confusion, Sena's expression became increasingly stern. She then eventually looked away from me, let out a small sigh, then took a bite of her popsicle. That's kind of cute right there. Freed from her sharp gaze, I nearly sank to the floor once again. Talk about looks like a kill. I would have sat down on one of the seats if I could have, but then I realized she might have said something to me if I did. I couldn't bring myself to. If that was what she meant, then yeah, I'd seen it. I'd followed the weird thing all the way here after all. Oh, what the fetch? Delusion? What was she talking about? Excuse me? No, I don't have one. How could I? This wasn't going well. I could barely get a word out. Sena glanced at me, then jerked her chin toward the window, not the chain. People, lots of people. Felt like there were even more people than before. Felt like I was going to get a headache just looking at them. There were people with their heads glued to their cell phones, people smiling over phone calls, people standing and staring at the stream of people. Practically everything I saw at the window was people standing around waiting for other people. I mean, if there were so many people here, why hadn't anyone come to the train since I'd gotten on? What? What kind of chuny plotline was that? Jokes aside, I also thought about similar things pretty often. So wait, maybe the premise of this is that like the world is a simulation. And remember he talked about even I talked about how meta it was. He talked about how he wondered if he was a character in a video game that was controlling him like he was controlling his character. And that's the thing, he is a character in a game. He's a character on a game depicted on a screen in my game. So what if this is a game about a story about people who live in Japan in a game, but some of them have noticed that the game is a game and are becoming self-aware that their delusions are glitches that are actually manifesting in some way in real life. And so like they're kind of becoming self-aware of themselves in the game in a simulation, but the simulation's in my computer. Is that what this is supposed to be? Because if so, that'd be crazy. And I wasn't trying to say that chuny plotlines were bad or anything. After all, the world was overflowing with books, movies, and anime that were nothing but chuny insanity. Oh yeah, isekai. Oh, so many isekai lately. Why was it the writer or movie director or whomever else would come up with chuny plotlines like that, and it was all well and good, but when amateurs like me did it, everyone made fun of us? The world's greats had all been chunibyo's. Just think about it. The Wright brothers had genuinely thought they could fly through the sky 100 years ago. Napoleon had boasted that the word impossible was not in my dictionary. That was why Chunibyo's weren't something to be mocked. It was the path of all the world's greats had taken. Well, here's the problem. Chunibyo's do get obsessed with delusions and fantasies, but the people you listed are people who weren't restrained by their delusions and only lived in delusions. They took their ideas and made them reality by action. That's the difference. But my question was, why had this girl suddenly started spouting all this chuny crap at me?
何を見ているかじゃない。何を見せられているかだ。人は体の外からの情報を五感によって得ているけど、その受け取る情報のおよそ 80% は視覚から入ってくるんだ。
That's true. We're very sight-dependent creatures.
そして視覚から得られた映像はパルス信号となって視神経を通り脳に送られる。
Yes, that's exactly how things work there. Just like a telephone, I thought to myself absentmindedly. A telephone converted your voice into electrical signals and sent that information to a distant location.
電話か。似ていると言えなくもない。
Wait, what? How did she hear that? Had she just read my mind? No, there was no way. Had I been mumbling to myself without realizing it again?
VR 技術を知っているか？
Yes. What virtual reality? Of course, I didn't actually answer her aloud.
ビジュアルリビルディング。
Huh? I was wrong. I never heard of that.
アメリカの精神生理学分野で研究が行われている技術だ。
Okay.
生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるように
Oh, it's the idea of...
ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。
Okay, so they're saying they're talking about the technology that's used to alter the brain and replace like faulty signal chemistry. I mean, aren't those the hearing aids, the collicles, like those devices that attach to the skull that let people who are deaf start to hear? Isn't that how that works? Essentially, it's a mechanical device that is replacing the sensations that would normally be given by the biological systems. That is true.
どうやってという顔をしているな。だが仕組みとしては単純な話だ。ビデオカメラが映した映像も脳を流れる神経パルスもどちらも突き詰めれば電気による信号なんだぞ。
Yeah, but getting them to communicate is a challenge. Nerve impulse, an electrical signal or stimulus that travels through the nerve cell of an organism, has the ability to quickly transmit information between tissue. I mean, because like here's the thing. I have a camera right now looking at me. It's recording my image and capturing it and like being able to reproduce it in a digital format. But the thing is that thing takes a decent amount of power. Our brain runs off less power than a light bulb. Like, it's really easy to overwhelm our brain's like electrical structure. It's impressive that we've even developed it though, if you think about it. Like, life was able to harness electricity through biological means. We're so used to the mechanical side of electricity, thinking about the fact that our bodies actively use electrical signals in the same way, but in a biological method is really cool.
要は神経パルスにコンバートできる技術さえあればいい。すでに実際にテストは成功している。ある研究チームが特許を取得済みだ。
I'd also point out too that the technology foundation that they're describing here is also like a super advanced form is the one that we saw in Steins Gate. The ability to read and kind of convert the mental patterns of the brain into digital data and then being able to upload that data back into a brain and rewrite the nerve signals inside a brain is an insane interpretation of that technology. It was patented, seriously. I thought that it was just a very hardcore delusion. It was an impressive amount of depth and detail behind it, but claiming that there was a full-on patent was taking it way too far.
その特許から読み取れることがある。
Sena, who had been looking out the window the whole time, turned to face me. She slowly crossed her legs.
ある意図的な情報を神経パルスへコンバートすることが可能なら、人の五感すべて、さらには人の意志そのものもコントロールできるんじゃないか。
Free will is questionable unless you accept the fact that people can only act if they have some semblance of their world. And so if you controlled all their senses, you could control their free will because they wouldn't have any, because you would just be programming exactly what you want them to see. The Matrix. Even though it was right in front of Shibuya Station, it was strangely quiet on the train as it felt like it had been deprived of sound itself. It was obviously an illusion, but I couldn't help but remember the delusion I'd had several days ago of the distorted Shibuya, and I thought about it. I couldn't take my eyes off the crowd moving outside the window.
さっき言ったように、人は電気仕掛けだ。脳だけじゃなく、全身に張り巡らされている神経にも電気が通っている。
Exactly.
つまり、肉体的な動きまでも操れるということになるんだ。理論的にはな。
This girl. I was taken aback. This girl was even more delusional than both me and Yua combined. What she's saying sounded logical, but was clearly total pipe dream. I don't
特
know.
許を取得した研究チームも、その方向へと研究内容をシフトしている。
I actually have to agree with her. Like, we're kind of seeing that. Like, think about Elon Musk's brain chip stuff. Like, that stuff's like, we're creeping closer and closer to this.
あまりに危険すぎる内容だったから、アメリカ大統領が歯止めをかけようとして、行政命令を出したくらいだ。
Oh, wow. How much of what she was saying was actually true? That's true. I'd want to see some sources.
いかなる機関であろうと、政府との事前合意なしに人体の機密の研究を行うことを禁じる。それを支援することも同様である。とな。
The common rule. What is that? United States policy clearly defined and regulating research involving human subjects, instilled in 1981, the full title of the federal policy to protect protection of human subjects. The policy states that all institutions performing experimentation involving human subjects must abide by a specific set of rules, such as obtaining informed consent, properly recording findings, and complying with authority, be it the federal government, agency, or institutional review board. In later subparts, additional protections are provided for pregnant women, children, fetuses, and prisoners. Good that we have that. Sena looked downward and clasped her hands, resting on her knees tightly.
だが世の中は腐った連中ばかりだ。倫理を無視して自分の利益のためだけに他者を平気で犠牲にするような連中がな。ヘドが出る。
After she finished voicing her disgust, she stuck the last chunk of a nearly melted crunchy kun in her mouth and suddenly stood up. I reflexively started to shrink back, only to run into the wall behind me.
無知は罪だ。知らない方が幸せなこともあるという人間もいるが、そんなのはただの甘えだ。
She's right.
世界を疑え。仕組みを知れ。
Doubt the world, study its mechanisms. Oh, that's a good quote.
この世界は完璧じゃない。
She was coming toward me. Thinking she might hit me, I tried to shield my face with my arm, but in the end, she slipped right past without me doing anything.
お前の見ている景色は本物か?
Ooh. Without looking at me, she murmured that as we passed each other, and then she promptly exited the train by herself. I stared out the window at Sena as she walked away, without looking back at me even once. She quickly disappeared into the sea of people. In the end, I had absolutely no clue as to what she'd been trying to tell me. And the only thing I took from it was that Sena despised the world, typical Tsunubio. From my point of view, though, it sucked butt to have her shoot her poisonous denpa bull crap at me without even letting me get a word in. Her tone of voice also had... Okay, wait, before I read that, you get a word in? That's hilarious, like you do that. Her tone of voice alone made me feel like I was being lectured. The way she talked was often a moe characteristic when it came to 2D, but in reality, it only served to make her feel even more like a total DQN. But the fact that she hadn't attacked me was a relief. A surprise, considering that for some reason she always gave off the aura that she was just raring to slap anyone and everyone. I wanted to take a breather after that, so I sat down on the seat where Sena had been sitting before. Immediately following that, the DQN-looking couple suddenly came into the car. After that came a trio of people that were obviously DQN Koyersars, an older middle-aged man, the younger businessman wearing a suit. What is this word? Koyersars. Okay, a Japanese fashion subculture that seeks to rebel against traditional standards of beauty, often associated with delinquency. Gaiers and their many subgroups explore fashion that is not necessarily considered normal in the eyes of society. For example, Ganguro involves bleaching hair, extreme tanning, and extensive use of makeup. There's also a less extreme type, such as Kagoyaras, who simply involve wearing school uniforms with very short skirts. Okay. So every anime character ever in a school uniform. The train car had become claustrophobic in the blink of an eye. Before Sena had left, no one had even tried to enter the car, so where the heck had they all come from? The voices of the GQN couple and the choreographers were parked way too loud, so I quickly got out of there while telling them all to go to hell in my head. Well, that was interesting. Alright. I think we're going to go ahead and end here. Obviously, we're on the computer talking to whatever his name is. But yeah, that was interesting. We got to see Sena. She seems cool. Definitely very cold. We're starting to actually see and interact with characters now, though, so I'm guessing we're going to finally get to know some of them and probably see more of a path forward. I wonder how right she is. Like, is this a simulation? I mentioned how it might have been a meta thing where, like, I'm playing a video game and that they're in the video game and they're becoming aware of that, but that might not be the meta they're going for. They might be going more for the idea that, like, the world itself might be a simulation. It's hard to prove it's not. So maybe that's what they're going for here, but we'll have to find that out. Regardless of that, yeah, I mean, heck, if that's technically true, then maybe I don't actually exist. Maybe I'm just another one of those, like, pieces of the program that's designed to try and create something that you find interesting, to capture your attention, to share stories with. You know, maybe that's all it is. I sure feel real, so I don't think that's the case, but it's hard to prove it because I'm on this side of the screen. I pre-recorded this. I'm re-uploading it, but you technically don't know that, so I wonder what you'll think of that. And it's one of those things where, like, I liked what she said. Oh, maybe I can see it real fast. It was... doubt the world, study its mechanisms. That's like the science in a nutshell. Not like seeking conspiracy theories. Like, but don't just dismiss something because it sounds bizarre. Like, search it out, look for the data, see what's backing up that information. But don't be quick to jump to conclusions or to accept what somebody tells you is actually going on, because it's one of those things of Occam's razor. Like, usually the most straightforward and simplest answer is the correct one. Because, like, if you choose to believe in a conspiracy, you really need to be able to answer why that conspiracy would make any sense. Because the majority of conspiracies, why would anyone even go to the trouble of making them? Because there's no point. But yeah. Anyway, enough about that. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. It's always a pleasure having you here, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's worth of videos. I'm coming off of a work day, so I'm sure I'll be exhausted, but I'm always happy to read your comments, and I'm really excited to see the story really starting to... It feels like we're really picking up pace now, and we're starting to get some potential, like, building blocks to work with. So it's sated my curiosity a little bit. That's very exciting. And yeah, we'll have to see what happens this next time. So thank you so much, especially to the patrons and members. You all are amazing. I'm going to do my best to... I've got some ideas of things I want to change on the channel, like positive things. But I have to kind of work on the back end a bit and see if it's something I can manage, especially because I have less time. It's going to be more difficult to make changes to the channel, but I still want to seek to make improvements to it and see it grow and become better and stronger in every way. So hopefully we'll be able to do something about it. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. It's a pleasure having you here. I look forward to seeing you all again. So until the next video watching me, or see me in next, I'll see you there.